Like in summarizing the Prophet's mission, Allah talked about Quran. And by doing so, what's He doing? He's cleansing them intellectually, giving them a sense of proportion, having them understand that the ethical foundations of Islam, the justice of our deen, doing right by people is such a big priority. And then there comes the legal. And you know what's happened to us as Muslims? Travel the Muslim world. The religious Muslims are very legally conscious, halal, haram, but socially very unconscious. In the sense of justice to others, rights of others, very unconscious. When it comes to halal meat, big priority. How much does the Quran emphasize doing right by others compared to how much Quran talks about dietary restrictions? I'm not saying dietary restrictions aren't important, but we've emphasized something and we've de-emphasized something else. There's a proportion that Quran gives in and of itself. It allows the balance. This is a little bit about the intellectual side. Of course, on the third dimension that should be mentioned about the intellectual side, intellectual cleansing, is that we're living in the world of multiple philosophies. Right? College students, by the time they've done 2 years of college, have been exposed to quite a diverse set of worldviews, and they're almost compelled, in a bullying sense, towards agnosticism. You're better off believing nothing. You're better off living a life of, I'm not sure. There's other ways of looking at it. You're pushed in that direction almost. Right? The Quran is a response to intellectually hollow philosophies. It contains those responses. I experienced that for myself. I didn't read this in a book. I was experiencing agnosticism at one point in my life. I'd taken one too many philosophy courses. It's like eating too much junk food. And you need a detox. And then I was so grateful. I went through the Dawra Tarjuma Quran. It was the entire Quran in Urdu translation, live, in New York City with Dr. Abdul Samir, my Arabic teacher, who became my Arabic teacher in the future. But my first exposure to him was the entire Quran as a conversation, one juz a night in Ramadan. It was like, Taraweeh goes until 11, and he goes until 3. That's 4 hours a day, every day, 30 days. But I was hooked, man. Because when you're listening, and you're really paying attention, you forget that there's a guy standing in front of you. It's just you and Quran. I've never heard speech where you don't even feel like it's somebody talking to you. It's Allah talking to you. This guy helped me connect to the Quran. So at the end of the program, I was like, I've never heard anything like that. This is the first time I thought this is Allah's word. I actually felt like Allah was talking to me. But that was through you. I want to get it for myself. So I said, okay, learn the Arabic. That's what he said, exact words. I was like, how? Next week. Okay, see you there. That was that. But, as a youth, you try to learn about deen and back in the day, you pick up tapes after Jumu'ah. Guys selling tapes outside and VHSs outside. Nowadays, you guys download or YouTube, whatever. Right? And you fill your iPods with MP3s. Kalamullah or whatever, right? And just listening to everything. There's so much stuff. And I was into so much stuff too. I listened to lots of different things. Such a wide variety of stuff. But man, did I get hooked on Quran. I was like, okay, I know there's a lot out there, but I'm going to make this my priority. I'm just going to study this. And when I get time a little bit, I'll study other things too. I just need to know what's going on in this book. I need this. And I've been hooked since, and I still can't get enough. I still can't. So this is on the intellectual side. Now a little bit on the spiritual side. What does spiritual cleansing mean? Spiritual cleansing means, you have anger problems, you have jealousy problems, you have laziness problems, you have character flaws. And the Quran starts hacking away at those character flaws. You have ghafla, you're heedless. You have heartless prayer. When you start paying attention to the Quran and it's read on to you enough times, you start becoming conscious. You can only ignore it so much. It just starts hitting you. And maybe it doesn't hit you every time, but now the frequency of the times it hits you gets increased because you're just exposed to Quran so much more. So there are more occasions that you're moved to tears, not less. you know? And it just keeps going, and it keeps purifying you. And then you find something. You find that people that don't have an exposure, a spiritual exposure to the Quran, they still feel a spiritual void. Human beings were given a hole in their heart to fill. You know? There was a hole in their heart that could only be filled with revelation. With revelation. And you know when that hole is not filled? Then it's filled with movies, and it's filled with music, and it's filled with, you know, video games, it's filled with addictions, it's filled with something else. And in the religious tradition, when Quran becomes a distant, it's a ilmi thing, it's a scholar's thing, it's not every Muslim thing, then you become a culture where, you know, and I don't say halal or haram, but your spiritual high is nasheeds, or it's like, you know, these other creative adhkar, or these, you know, these other practices, spiritual practices that are supposed to bring you closer to Allah. But you know what? Spiritually, the Prophet ﷺ gave us the highest form of spirituality was given to the Prophet ﷺ when he reached the highest place any human beings ever reached. He reached, you know, by the arsh of Allah, and what was he given? Salat. And what is most of salat? Standing and reciting Quran. The most spiritual experience that is like dictated by revelation is revelation itself in prayer. But when that's empty and that becomes just like, you know, there's salat, but then there's going to be real dhikr. You know? And that real dhikr, you know why that becomes popular? Because something's missing in salat. And people go on a campaign about saying this isn't right, this isn't from the sunnah, this isn't that, that's a weird practice, and you shouldn't do this, or you should. I don't talk about any of that. I'm like, you know why that exists? Because there's a spiritual void. And people just haven't been told how to fill it. They don't know how to fill it. And they've, unfortunately, even Muslims have underestimated the spiritual power of the Quran. That it does purify. It does purify. And then you supplement that with the adhkar. You supplement that with, you know, a teacher that can teach you du'as and supplications and, you know, beautiful aspects of worship. Fine. Fine. But at the heart of it all, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, he purifies them. And when this purification, this cleansing happens, only then, there's a wa. Wa is, you know, it's atuf, which means this is not simultaneous. This is one, and then this, and then this, and then this. So wa, it can even be like in a progressive sense. It could be simultaneous too. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, and he teaches them the law. What is the law? This is halal, this is haram, this is what you have to do, this is what you better not touch. Okay, this is permissible for you. Here's how you deal with financial transactions. Here's how you run your business. Here's how you get married. Here's how you treat your wife. Here's how you treat your husband. Law. Why would people care about the law if they're not cleaned on the inside? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. I'm not intellectually convinced what the benefits are of following Sharia law. It seems too restrictive to me. I don't know if it's conducive to modern lifestyle. I think we have a really narrow-minded view of Sharia. I think we need to be a little more broad-minded and think of it as restrictions that were applicable to a different time. You use big words, bro. Just, God told you not to do it, don't do it. Don't give me big words to justify why you're drinking a Budweiser. There's something missing inside you. There's something not there. The tazkiyah hasn't happened. I argue when Quran is truly talked about, even a little, you don't have to have debates about halal and haram meat. You don't have to have debates about alcohol and pork and lotteries on store owners, Muslim store owners. You don't have to have those conversations. They will drop it themselves. They'll let it go because Quran had that effect on them. You and I can't. You and I just can't. Revelation has that power. If it can change like a dangerous gangster like Umar radiallahu anhu before Islam, Quran changed them. Quran changed them, you know. Then, I mean, we're just underestimating its power to change people. It's one of its miracles. It changes people, you know. And then you teach the book. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. And then once you start applying the book, if you know, by the way, when somebody truly teaches you something, that means you are utilizing it. And when you do, then finally he teaches the wisdom. And you know what we think of as wisdom? So funny. We think of wisdom as people that drop like epic lines on Twitter. That's deep, bro. Question?
Can Quran have that power without the other language?
I think so. I think so. A Quran can have that power if it's genuinely communicated in any language. And I say that just from experience. I don't say that because I read that somewhere. But I believe it can. And that's why I believe there needs to be a campaign, an international campaign of Quran being translated not in print, but in speech. As a talk. It has its power, you know. But let me tell you a little bit about hikmah. Hikmah is not some guy that drops big lines or some guy who speaks in really abstract terms. Life is like a tree. Whoa. It's so deep. That's wise, man. That's not wisdom in Islam. Actually, not even in the Arabic language. Al-ilmu nafi'u wal-amalu bihi. Hikmah is described as beneficial knowledge and then acting upon it. Hikmah could be something as simple and rudimentary as fire burns, and therefore I'm not going to touch it. The guy that knows fire burns has knowledge. The guy that knows fire burns and doesn't touch it has wisdom. So it's possible that you have knowledge but you don't have wisdom, meaning you know it's right, you know it's wrong, but you still do the wrong thing. So the guy touches fire. Didn't you know it burns? Yeah. Why'd you do it? I don't know. But you just said you do know. Missing wisdom. The hikmah at the end is very powerful if you understand it in its linguistic origin, in that sometimes people learn and learn and learn and learn, but they only learn knowledge, they don't learn wisdom. So they learn the law, but they don't learn wisdom. So the prophetic methodology was teaching law, and then actually teaching people how to be able to live by it and to uphold it. The practical dimension of it is wisdom. Wisdom isn't higher, deeper discussions. Wisdom is tarbiyah. Okay, now that you've learned it, here's how you live by it. And here's what you do when you make a mistake, because you're a human being. Sahaba made mistakes. And they would come to the Prophet ﷺ and he'd teach them wisdom. Okay, this is the istighfar you make. This is how you avoid doing this again. That's wisdom. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. These four things are the Prophet's ﷺ's formula given by Allah to turn a person around. This is what turns a person around. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. We talk about turning our communities around, turning the Muslims around, turning the people that need our da'wah around. Allah turned this formula, turned the Makkans around. I mean, you're talking about the worst of the worst. It turned some of them around, And this is the formula. And so every dimension of this, it becomes critical. We, alhamdulillah, have made some progress in yu'allimuhumul kitab, I argue. We Muslims, today in the information age, as information in all dimensions has become massively accessible, religious information has become more accessible now. You can take more classes now, courses now, read more books now than probably ever before in human history, even on Islam. You can learn more about Islam now easily, even in translated languages, even if you don't know Arabic, than ever before. So somebody can have a deep discussion about, the 4 schools of thought without knowing Arabic, because they've read a PhD thesis or done some studies or whatever. But the other 3, 2 before and 1 after, يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ يُزَكِّيهِمْ. I personally don't see that we're getting anywhere there. We don't have a program. And then hikmah at the end, how do you live by this stuff? We don't have a program for that. And we need to develop a program that's not global necessarily, but very, very local. 2, 3, 4 friends get together. They have a knowledgeable one among them who's teaching them. They're learning Quran together. They're memorizing a little together. Their ideas are being cleansed together. They're helping each other reach a little more. And then they're learning the book, and then they're acting, and they're encouraging each other to act in the right way and make the right decisions together. This happens when people get together and encourage each other to do the right thing. This is why this is the power of community. The people stuck around the Prophet ﷺ so he could execute this. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Even though much before, they were in clear, open misguidance. They were lost. These people were out there. And that's one of the most beautiful endings, philosophical endings to an ayah. Allah talks about these people being turned around by the Prophet ﷺ, and then He says, these people were, if you saw them before, they were goners. You would never think this guy is going to be something amazing. فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. For a long time, they were just way out there. You would never see potential in that guy. But Allah turned them around. وَإِن كَانُوا مِن قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. So Allah is teaching us that there are people that, if this formula is followed, Allah can turn around whoever He wants. That's not us. We're not going to change anybody. But you stick to this formula, and Allah will, by means of this, turn people around that you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even imagine. وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ. So awesome, this ayah is about us, and there are others, other than themselves, other than the unlettered, other than the Arabs of Makkah. Others. And when the Ansar read this, they said, oh, that's us. آخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ. We're not the Makkans. But Allah didn't say, وَأَهْلَ مَدِينَ. People of Medina. He didn't say that. He didn't say, He didn't mention other villages and other tribes. He just says, other than those original. Well, guess what? You and I are akharina minhum also. When the Muslims got to Persia and so many Persians became Muslim, they're akharina minhum too. When Islam reached Europe, they're akharina minhum too. When Islam came to India, we're akharina minhum too. Allah called it in Surah Al-Jumu'ah. This message came to the Ummiyyin, which was actually a burn to the Jews, because when they heard, those Jews of Arabia, when they heard that the message came to the Ummiyyin, they're like, Ummiyyin, that was the whole reason we believed they don't deserve revelation. And the other problem in their tradition was you can only have this revelation and guidance if you belong to this ethnic group. And it can't just be exported to others. You can't just accept this, it's ours. We own it. Allah says, no, actually this time, other people will jump right in. وَآخَرِينَ مِنْهُمْ لَمَّا يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ. Other than them, that haven't even joined them yet. Lamma, not yet, remember? In lamma, they haven't joined them yet. لَمَّا يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. And He's the ultimate authority, all wise. Allah is already calling the ummah will be international. It'll be multicultural. There'll be so many different kinds of people that haven't joined the Sahaba yet. But they will. And what's يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ also, it's so beautiful, and that one day we will be joined with them in Jannah too. So we haven't joined them in Islam, or we hadn't yet joined them in Islam, and also once so many have made it to Jannah already, and by Allah's permission, when you and I go, we'll be joining them. There are so many others that haven't yet joined them. And He's the ultimate authority, all-wise. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ. That is the favor of Allah. يُؤْتِيهِ مَن يَشَاءُ. He gives it to whoever He wants. This is also, again, a snub to those who believe revelation comes to a select few. It's not the domain of everyone. It's not the domain of everyone. Allah says that's the favor of Allah. He gives it to whoever He wants. Another important consideration in this ayah, if you look at it in the context of the discussion about the Quran itself. By the way, al-hikmah, I didn't tell you something about what Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i said about hikmah. They said hikmah is sunnah. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. He teaches them the book and the wisdom. So they said the book is the Quran and the hikmah is the sunnah, which is completely complementary to what I've been telling you. I've been telling you hikmah is the practical dimension. And what is the practical teachings? The sunnah. They saw it for what it is. Like these people, they gave one word explanations, but they're deep. When you study the word hikmah on its own merits, you come to the same conclusion. Subhanallah. Anyhow, ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ. That is the favor of Allah. What's the favor of Allah? That the messenger is making an entire nation educated in the book. Right? An entire nation is getting cleansed. The ayat are recited onto them. You know what the biggest corruption in religion is? Is there corruption in religions in the world? Sure. There are means by which people are manipulated. It becomes an industry very quickly. Social manipulation, economic manipulation. Riots are caused by religious fanatics for their own gains. They use people like sheep. But you know when that happens? When a few are knowledgeable and most rely on their knowledge. Few people are knowledgeable in religion. Everybody else says, he's saying it must be right. But you know what? Now Allah is teaching us, yes, there will be fuqaha, there will be mujtahid, there will be ulama, there will be people of high caliber. But the average Muslim will at least be educated in what? At least in Quran they will know. So they know their priorities, and then they know crazy when they hear it. They can't be manipulated. This is a unique religious teaching that did not exist before us in this way. That did not exist before us. The religions before us, the main obstacle to Islam for the Jewish community was the rabbis. The main obstacle to Islam for the Christian community was the ministers, who knew more than everybody else, and actually even saw it. Even Allah says, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. They recognize it like they recognize their own sons. Their research yields the result that this is revelation. They can't bear the thought of telling their people though. And their people can't see it for themselves because their people themselves are not at a mass level educated in revelation. If their people were educated in revelation, they would see revelation for what it is. They'd be able to tell. Most Christians you talk to don't know the Bible. They simply don't know it. They know select passages that they've heard in Sundays. That's it. They don't actually know the Bible. You know? It's the same of other people of faith. Our religion was supposed to be socially, not just in its teaching, socially it was supposed to be different in that the average Muslim was supposed to be versed in the Quran. The average Muslim was supposed to know Quran and was supposed to have this exposure. بعد الحلقة إن شاء الله انتظر من فضلك. ذلك فضل الله يؤتي. And by the way, one quick thing about that, Umar radiallahu anhu, you know, during his khilafah, he would go around and check if every masjid, every few group of Muslims have a halaqah of Quran going on or not. Like he saw that as a necessary piece of maintaining decent citizenship in the Muslim ummah. We have to maintain the integrity of the ummah. The Quran education needs to continue. ذَلِكَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That is the favor of Allah. He grants it to whoever He wants. وَاللَّهُ ذُو الْفَضْلِ الْعَظِيمِ. And Allah is the owner of the ultimate favor. I'll stop here inshallah ta'ala because the first passage is done. I know I'm taking extra long in these surahs, but I can't help it. بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات وذكر الحكيم.